The movie begins with two siblings, Michael and Donna, watching an old cartoon. Michael quickly gets bored and starts playing with a toy while Donna reads a book. Michael then looks outside the window, revealing their house in the middle of the woods, isolated from any other homes or shops. The scene shifts to winter. Michael and Donna are having breakfast while a masked woman works in the kitchen. Michael draws a birthday card for his mother, drawing the 5 members of their family in a strange way. When the woman removes her mask and approaches, Michael hides his drawing. Michael, who wears a hearing aid, is asked by Donna to give it to her for a prank. When their father, Richard, enters the kitchen and kisses the woman, Donna puts the earpiece near the radio, causing loud static that makes the kids laugh. Richard then goes outside, gazing at the cold woods with Coral, the woman from the kitchen. An elderly woman named Mrs. Start watches them closely. Richard leaves for work, greeting the elderly woman on his way out. After this, Coral walks around the house, noticing the sliding glass door to the garage is open. She cautiously enters, grabs a vase for protection, and peeks into the basement, sensing someone's presence. Suddenly, a figure moves behind her. Coral follows and finds someone crouched on the floor. Just as she's about to strike, Donna appears, revealing that the intruder is her boyfriend. Coral questions if Donna's father knows about the boy, but Donna retorts by calling Coral a homewrecker, revealing Coral isn't her mother. Later, Michael is in the woods plucking flowers. The elderly woman, Mrs. Start, approaches and asks if they're for his mother. He nods, and Mrs. Stewart assures him his mother will love them. In the next scene, Michael runs inside and asks Coral where his mom is. Coral reminds him she can't be there, so Michael angrily throws the flowers away. Michael goes to his room, where we see a framed photo of him with his mom and some scary drawings he made. Coral enters, showing him the picture he was drawing earlier, but now she's added herself as the 5th family member. She pins it to the wall, trying to get Michael's attention, but he lies in bed, emotionless. Later, Coral puts her mask back on when Richard returns home. After complaining about the weather, Richard goes to ask Michael if he's giving Coral a hard time. He explains that Coral is making an effort and wants Michael to do the same. Michael tells his dad he just wants his mom back. Richard reminds him they agreed Michael and his sister would stay with him until their mom feels better. Richard then promises to take Michael to the flower shop the next day to pick out flowers for his mom. After Richard leaves, Michael looks fearfully at the altered drawing with Coral added. In the living room, a sharp knock on the door prompts Richard to check, but he sees no one. Suddenly, a figure tries to open the sliding door. Richard opens it to find a woman, Linda, who is their mom, wanting to see the children. Richard firmly tells her she can't. Linda tries to enter, but Richard angrily stops her. Michael sees his mom and is thrilled, but Richard yells at him to go back to his room. Linda insists she won't leave without her kids, but Richard explains his reasons and demands she see a professional. With Coral beside him, he threatens to call the police, forcing Linda to leave. Afterward, Richard feels guilty, and Coral comforts him, saying every family has its demons. Richard wakes up on the couch in the middle of the night to a loud alarm. He runs outside to the garage and finds Linda in the car with the engine running. He frantically tries to get her out and revive her. Then, the movie fast-forwards to 3 months later. Donna gets out of her boyfriend Sam's car, complaining about Coral, whom she calls Creepy Mary Poppins. She mentions catching Coral staring at herself with the mask on for 20 minutes. Sam jokes about Donna wearing the mask, and she says that she will when she's old and ugly. He reassures her she'll never be either of those things, and they kiss. At a laundromat, Donna tells Sam she knows nothing about Coral, not even how her father met her. She thinks Coral wants her out of the house. To distract her, Sam carries her to his car. Meanwhile, Coral is on the couch wearing her mask, watching TV. Meanwhile, Michael hears a sudden sound in the washroom but doesn't know where it's coming from. The scene then shifts to Mrs. Start in her front yard, looking at a locket with a photo of a man she loves. Michael spies on her and she calls out to him. He asks if she misses the man, and she says she does every moment of every day. They were together for 44 years, and now she's alone with fading memories. Back at the house, Coral abruptly takes off her mask and peeks through the window at Michael and Mrs. Start. Mrs. Start notices her and tells Michael that the things humans do in this world echo in the next. Michael says he just wants his mom home, and Mrs. Start says she knows. Back home, Michael tries to call his mother in the living room. When Donna comes home, her father tells her to turn off the loud music, but she rudely tells him to leave. Richard can't tolerate Donna's behavior anymore. He claims to understand what she's going through, but she doesn't believe him. Meanwhile, Michael asks his mom on the phone when she's coming to get him. Richard tells Donna he's there for her, but adds that he's leaving for a few days. Donna points out the inconsistency, saying he always leaves for long periods despite claiming to be there for her. She blames him for her mom's breakdown. Richard, losing patience, insists he loves her but won't tolerate her disrespect. Michael ends his phone call with his mom, looking at the phone oddly. Michael runs to Donna's room, asking if their dad is really leaving, but she's too upset to answer. Richard tells Coral she left her ultrasound photo downstairs, revealing she's pregnant with a boy. That night, Michael wakes up, frightened by the loud thunder. He tries to turn on his lamp, but can't. A black figure briefly appears, frightening him. Meanwhile, in her room, Donna sees a face peeking in the doorway, but finds no one there. Everyone experiences paranormal activity, including Richard, who hears a child crying in the washroom. Richard joins Coral in bed, noticing she's still wearing her unsettling mask. Hearing a strange noise, he checks on Michael. Richard sits on Michael's bed, telling him to sleep. He sees a lump under the blanket, assuming it's Michael hiding. Michael, from under the bed, says there's a monster Coral made. When Richard looks under the bed, he's shocked to find a frightened Michael realizing the lump on the bed must be something else. Scared, Richard looks back up and sees the lump is gone. He approaches a large cover in the room, but finds nothing. Suddenly, a scary black figure appears near his face, discharging strange particles at him. Richard wakes up startled and disoriented, realizing it was all just a dream. At this point, Richard hears a loud alarm and goes downstairs to check for intruders. After a thorough search, he disarms the system. Turning around, he gets scared by Coral, who is standing behind him with her chilling mask on. She takes it off and asks if everything is okay. Richard says he thinks the alarm is broken. The next morning, Richard leaves while Coral sees him out. He leaves a note and some cash on the fridge for the kids. Later, Coral trips on the basement stairs when the light unexpectedly goes off. She turns and sees Donna, assuming she pushed her. Donna denies it, blaming the old house. Coral stares at her, and Donna insults her before slamming the door. Donna then takes the money from the fridge. Michael enters the master bedroom and looks through a photo book of his mother. He finds Coral's mask and tries it on. Hearing footsteps, he hides under the bed as Coral enters the room. She notices the moved photo book and her mask on the floor, but leaves without spotting Michael. That night, Michael watches a clown named Pogo on TV, entertained by the clown painting children's faces. Meanwhile, Coral dances to loud music in the living room. The noise makes Michael listen at his door to see what Coral is doing. Outside, Mrs. Stewart sees a dark figure in a window and runs away. Inside, Michael sees a figure under a blanket on his bed. Pulling it off, He finds it was just an illusion. Mrs. Start, now at home, flips through a book on demonology. Back at the house, the blanket Michael removed starts taking shape behind him. Mrs. Start continues reading scary descriptions and pictures while the blanket rises. Michael, terrified, turns around just as the blanket drops. While all this unfolds, Coral keeps dancing until Michael comes into the living room and picks up the phone to call his mom. Coral takes off her mask and grabs a knife from the kitchen. Michael quietly hangs up and runs into his room. Coral goes upstairs and stands near his room. Scared, Michael hides in his closet. Coral enters but doesn't see him. Michael watches her fearfully through a crack in the door. Suddenly, her face appears in his view, but she doesn't see him in the darkness. A loud knock on the front door saves Michael, making Coral leave. She looks through the peephole and sees Linda calling for her son. Coral doesn't open the door and adds an extra lock. Linda searches for other ways to enter while Coral locks all the windows and doors. Linda stands outside, calling for her children. In Michael's room, the TV turns on by itself, showing static. He steps out of the closet to look at the TV and realizes Coral has locked him in by tying a rope to his door handle. Meanwhile, Donna is at a party. She sees Sam talking to a girl and interrupts by kissing him. She asks about the girl derogatorily. Sam tells her to relax and not to drink. Donna pushes him away, insults him, and leaves the party. Back in Michael's room, the TV shows glimpses of Pogo the Clown between static. Suddenly, the clown screams horrifyingly, and a dark figure runs past Michael. The same creature that appeared in Richard's nightmare briefly shows itself again, sitting in the darkness in Michael's room. Meanwhile, Coral steps outside with her knife. Terrified, Michael sits on his bed, hugging his stuffed toy. A strange black hand briefly emerges from under the bed. Mrs. Start, in her own house, calls out to Michael with her eyes closed. The TV in his room turns on. Michael asks if Mrs. Start is doing this. She tells him not to be afraid, to stay away from the darkness, and to remember what she told him about human actions. When Michael calls out to Mrs. Start again, she doesn't respond. Desperate, he runs to the television, hoping to hear her voice. At that moment, Coral re-enters the house through the sliding door, forgetting to lock it, which allows Linda to slip in unnoticed. Coral heads to the basement, while Linda starts moving through the house. Coral hears the creaking floorboards above, but stays in the basement. In his room, Michael starts crying, calling out to Mrs. Start, then returns to his bed, scared and confused. Donna arrives home and struggles to open the front door because of the locks. Coral finally lets her in, hiding a knife behind her back, but Donna is suspicious. Meanwhile, Linda enters Michael's room. As she hugs him, the door shuts ominously. Linda says she can finally say a proper goodbye to Michael. At the front door, Donna asks Coral if she's wearing her mom's clothes. She then sees the knife and asks what Coral is doing with it. Coral claims she was scared and needed protection, but Donna isn't convinced and runs into the woods with Coral following. Meanwhile, Richard drives back home, leaving a message for Coral saying he's returning earlier than expected. In his room, Michael and his mom continue their cryptic conversation. Michael says he doesn't understand, but his mom tells him it's okay and takes the blame on herself. On his drive back, Richard recalls finding Linda and Michael in the garage 3 months earlier. Linda had told Michael they were going on an adventure. Richard found them unconscious in the car and pulled Michael out, but it was too late. The memory fills Richard with agony. In the present, Linda urges Michael to go toward the light from his TV and not look back. Scared, Michael starts walking toward the static. Linda reassures him, saying she can't go where he's going. Meanwhile, Coral catches Donna hiding behind the house and impulsively stabs her. seemingly by accident. Back in the room, the monster appears again and starts dragging Linda under the bed, making Michael turn around to witness the whole scene. On the other end, Donna falls dead to the ground and Coral runs away in fear. She returns home to call Richard, unsteadily trying to inform him of what happened to Donna. He tells her to calm down since he can't understand her. In a sudden twist of events, we learn that Michael was never in the house. In fact, he was never alive in the first place. In his room, the monster stands near the boy, twisting and cracking around scarily. Meanwhile, Coral sees a photo of Michael with his mom falling from the wall, and she is terrified of what is happening and runs out of the house. At this point, some otherworldly form of Michael is attempting to help his mother from getting dragged under the bed by the monstrous demon. Richard finally reaches home, but since he's driving frantically, he accidentally slams the car into Coral. As soon as this happens, Michael instantly vanishes along with Linda. Richard exits his car, seeing Coral lying dead and lifeless on the ground. If that wasn't bad enough, he sees his daughter's dead body nearby too. Witnessing this tragedy brings him to his knees. In the last scene of the movie, we take a final tour inside the house where we hear faint, agonized screams. The camera focuses on Michael's scary drawing of his mom, and then the door to his room closes eerily.